Hello and welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is the Sphinx-like guru of the atom, it's Niall Moore.
Hey, how you doing, Mark?
We're Barbenheimer. We're finishing it up. We did the Barbie, now we
Yeah,
got the
it's
Heimer.
it's been an interesting thing. And since we last talked, the Oscar nominations have come out and Barbie got what, eight? And this has got what, 12, 13, something like that.
13, 21 total Oscar nominations. Well
That's
deserved.
pretty good going.
Well deserved. Yeah, there's a lot to get into there with like Greta not getting nominated, but I did the statistics and only 1.87% of all Best Director nominees are women. It's not funny.
Yeah, it's
It's
pretty
terrible.
bad.
Yeah.
My wife and I were rewatching a lot of the Best Picture winners over the last year. We watched one a week, so going back to 1970. And one of the things that came up was, oh, there's only been up in I think 2010 for
22
the Hurt Locker was
first
the
winner.
first female to win it.
Yeah. Three had been nominated before. But you know what's crazy? Lena Wertmuller was nominated in 76. And then you had Jane Campion. So you had like Italian film, and then you had a New Zealander making a movie, and then Sofia Coppola was the first American-born person to win, and she had to go to Tokyo to get nominated, and then Catherine Bigelow had to go to Tunisia to make a
Yeah.
movie and get nominated. It's what's the first movie? So the first movie, like maybe Nomadland by Chloe Zhao was the first movie shot in the United States.
Probably, yeah. Um,
Like, Promising Young
which is
Woman
crazy.
as well. Yeah, Promising Young Woman. But that was shot by Emerald Fennell, who's British. And she was in Barbie. She's on a roll. She directed Saltburn. But yeah, the stats
Saltburn,
are,
that was an interesting an interesting
oh
movie.
gosh. Yeah, the stats are terrible, but I'm writing a video about it. So it'll probably be out by the time this episode's out. So type in like Mark Hoffmeyer fandom. You can check it out. But yeah, man, dude, Oppenheimer. Holy man, I've watched this movie 3 times and it just gets better.
I've
I don't care if I'm,
I've only seen it twice, and I think I've done the full spectrum of how to watch it. I've watched it in the best way possible as it's envisaged. So this was on 70 millimeter native
Mhm.
IMAX at the BFI in London, which is the biggest screen in the UK. And I've watched it on an airplane, which is a very, very different viewing experience. And both times I've just been captivated. It's a phenomenal piece of filmmaking.
It's almost, it's just dumb. Like it's just too good. It's just not dumb. It's just Nolan working on all cylinders. And this wasn't an expense. They shot this in 55 days. This movie was under $100 million. The budget was under $100 million. So I mean, this is only a movie that I think gets made from someone like a Nolan for this cheap and that fast.
Yeah,
Because
there's a lot of clout he has to get the best people in because they actually want to work with him
yeah,
rather than having to pay over the odds to get someone in because they're not really that interested, but they'll do it for a paycheck.
yeah, you're getting the best, and you're going to New Mexico. You're going to the middle of nowhere. You're building the Oval Office overnight because you just need the set because you couldn't find a set
Yeah,
for
I
Gary Oldman
think
for one day of shooting. It's yeah, and like you just have you're doing experimental stuff. You're doing the in camera stuff. You are, when I watched this movie, so it was really cool. I went to this place called the Terra Theater. I went for a press screening, packed theater, saw it on film, and no one moved for 3 hours. But I remember sitting in there and just going like, this movie's going to win every ensemble award out there. And the more
yeah,
I
my
researched this,
experience
oh, sorry, go for it.
yeah, my experience was similar. I was sat in a screening at 8 a.m. on a Monday morning in an absolutely packed theater.
Oh,
Nobody got up to go to the bathroom. Nobody left the auditorium. The movie played out, and I've never heard such stunned silence at the end of a movie. Nobody was speaking as we were walking out of the theater. Everybody was just blown away. It was crazy.
it's absurd. And everyone's throwing heaters, man. And I was reading, you and I both watched behind the scenes documentary. So I got the 4K, you bought it on Apple. And then they sent me the 4K, which is a wonderful first world problem. So I have two up, like, which is pretty awesome. But what's great about this movie is when they were talking about like the actors, like David Dasmelchian and Josh Hartnett and Matt Damon, they said that this movie is kind of like, he's like, I look at myself as part of a mosaic. Like there's color. I'm like part of a mosaic. And they said like Josh Hartnett didn't want to play a scientist. He wanted to play someone who wasn't a scientist. He didn't want to play it like that. But every single one of the actors knew that the dialogue, Oppenheimer is the key. And so don't overstage Oppenheimer. Just be as solid as possible and know that this is Emily Blunt's, Robert Downey Jr.'s, and Cillian Murphy's film. And it was just really cool that they all, like, you have big actors, right, who have headlined big movies, but they all understood their role in this film. Like,
Yeah,
and I
it's
love that.
the casting. If you look at all of the actors who were in it, you have a lot of different actors who, like you said, would headline other movies, playing almost a bit part. My personal bugbear with it, as I think I mentioned to you when I saw it, is Jack Quaid, who's playing Richard Feynman, and I think he has two lines in the movie, and then is just in the background playing bongos,
Yeah,
and it's really clever use of
bongos.
knowing about Feynman. I've read Feynman's autobiographical works, and he tells the story of what happened. And he said that, yeah, I remember sitting on the trunk of my car playing the bongos after it. And, that's something that has been picked up and added to the movie. So people who are aware can see it's like, oh, that's Feynman. Oh, I remember he mentioned that. He famously, he did some other really interesting stuff at Los Alamos. He used to go around cracking the other people's safes, and he used to break out the fence, and he was doing all sorts of things. There's a whole movie in there that you could have with just Jack Quaid doing Richard Feynman's antics at Los Alamos, maybe as a gag reel somewhere.
It just you know how they do like additional Too Fast Too Furious movies? Just do a side one of that, of him just running around the
Yeah,
facility, running
just
amok.
being annoying, basically.
And you know what's
Um,
tough? A lot of people have talked about this movie. They're like, there's not a lot of roles for women. There's not lot of roles for other men. There's not they don't show the aftermath of the bombs landing in Japan. But at the end of the day, Nolan talks about this. He's like, this is Oppenheimer's movie. This is a movie called Oppenheimer. And so, we don't, this is an ensemble piece that isn't an ensemble piece, if that makes sense. Like, it's an absolute ensemble.
Yeah, and there
And
aren't many female roles for the sake of female roles, but two of the biggest roles in the movie are females, like Florence Pugh and Emily Blunt, who she was fantastic.
Oscar nominated, right? She's incredible.
Yeah, her performance, particularly when it got to the not trial scene where she was standing up to the prosecutor, I thought she was phenomenal.
In the quote unquote shitty room that everyone hated. Like, they're like,
Yes.
they could have built that on set, but they chose to film this like really crappy room. And I think the most impressive part of Oppenheimer is finding enough angles to make that room somewhat interesting. Because
Yeah, when you see it, it's what, 6 feet by 12 feet long or something. It's really, really small. And they said about the trouble they had getting even the equipment in there to be able to film these things.
and then you got that giant IMAX camera that sounds like a truck has broken.
Exactly.
And what's cool though, like the way that they established the lenses though. I mean, you know what's crazy? At some points, like the focal length, where it was like you could have a nose in focus, but the eyes would be out of focus. That's how crazy the lenses were on this. Like they
They had to
pushed
design new
everybody.
lenses.
Yeah, and
And
film.
yeah, the new film, that was something I'll bring up a little bit
Did you
later
see
when
the
we go to
tanks?
the
Did you see the
yeah.
tanks that, like, what? Like, imagine being Christopher Nolan, Niall. Like, just, hey guys, this doesn't exist. Create it. It can't be done. Yes, it can. And then people make it happen. It's wonderful.
Well,
Same
it
thing
goes back
happened on
to
Tenet.
what we talked about with Bob Zemeckis, particularly with Roger Rabbit, where it's really pushing what you can do, and that's what makes it interesting. It's not just using digital effects to artificially make this thing black and white. He wanted to shoot it on native black and white IMAX reel, which had never been done before because it didn't exist, and the result is spectacular.
And listen, nowadays we should be happy that there are people like Nolan, people like Denis Villeneuve, even Greta Gerwig, with the way she pushed Barbie to the extremes. Like, we should be happy that these people are getting $100 million budgets, $150 million budgets, $200 million budgets, and they're not just making a crap film. Like, I feel like with each movie, they are, hey, we need to do native black and white IMAX film. Like, I need to have gigantic sets. Denis Villeneuve in the volume, the way that they shot the helicopters in Dune, those little heli carriers, like just they're not they're not content to just take $200 million and make a movie. I think they want to push boundaries. Like they're going, I think the great directors do want to do that. And
Well, the
some of the great directors, not all of the great directors, but you know what I mean.
well, the example I always use when we talk about visual effects and the real world is Jurassic Park. The dinosaurs still look realer there because they're a combination of physical effects with the digital. And a director knowing that if you can do something physically, you can generally make it look a lot more real, and being willing to put in the work with amazing visual effects artists and special effects teams to actually build these things for real rather than relying on computers. I work with computers every day. You can make them do anything to an okay level, but the end result is still very much uncanny valley.
Mm-hmm. And it's just like I think I, what am I trying to say here? I think the reason why the best directors are the best directors are because they just think about things. Like they they really think about the minutia of everything. Greta Gerwig and Chris Nolan. I was listening to Margot Robbie talk to Cillian Murphy, the Actors on Actors spotlight, and they're like, Chris wears the same thing every day, so he doesn't have to think. Greta Gerwig had 5 jumpers Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, just to get in them because she has 1,000 things to answer, and that they don't want to think about that. So I just think they and like Sophia Coppola too. I think Sophia Coppola is incredible. I think they really know their movies to the core. If that like Greta
Yeah,
Gerwig,
it's
like they know they're so hey, I am going to build this set and augment it with some VFX, but everything's going to be real. Anything that I can do in camera, I will, and I
well,
will
for some
use
of
VFX.
Oppenheimer, they use the real locations. They filmed in Oppenheimer's house
Yeah, yeah.
at Los Alamos.
And
You can't get more authentic than that.
like Roma, right? The director knew that he was going to be working with inexperienced actors, so when they build sets, he built them with real tile and real wood. And so when the non-actors walked into the sets and they were barefoot, they felt the cold tile on their feet. They felt the sturdiness of the kitchen. It wasn't just some plywood set that you and I could plow over like one night when we're drunk leaving a bar, just walking through it. So, which we might have done in Korea, but we yeah, I think the best directors just know how to just create the sets and create the world and get the shots. And none of it's easy, man. You hear about the making of Barbie, the making of Roma, the making of Oppenheimer, Back to the Future, Seven Samurai, Citizen Kane, like Boys in the Hood. Like that was a really interesting movie to make by John Singleton, but it's wonderful. Like you, you, but they know they're so good because they know the movies. Like, and that's why I think this movie is so good, is because I think he just knew the film inside and out. Everyone knew that he knew it inside and out, and they just trusted him on his journey. But he also worked, I think, a lot of collaboration, and he has a lot of trust with the people he works with. So it goes both ways as far as like a leader and someone that like also trusts who he's working with.
Well,
And
you've
then
got as the crew referred to him, the Dutchman, as
the strong Dutchman.
as the director of photography. Hoyt van Hoytema
Yeah,
was the his work with the camera, was phenomenal. You got Ludwig Göransson back to do the score. He did Tenet previously, and the score is phenomenal. I was
phenomenal.
listening to it at work today. I just had it on in my AirPods as I was working away and just zoned out listening to it. It was amazing. His VFX guys, a lot of these guys have worked with him on multiple movies because he knows they're good and he trusts them, and they know that he trusts them, so they bring their best work to him, and it goes two ways, and it's brilliant.
But like, he brought in like, Ruth DeYoung too. Like this is a lady who she's worked with Paul Thomas Anderson, right? She's worked with Terrence Malick. She was a production designer on Manchester by the Sea. She was a production designer on Twin Peaks, the latest Twin Peaks. Even Yellowstone, she was the production designer on. She was a production designer on Nope. Like that's crazy. This like she's gnarly talented, and I love the way that she built Los Alamos. Like the entrance to it it was what the buildings were 5 foot long, but they used forced perspective to make them look giant. And just the way
Yeah,
that
it
they,
was or was it 5 foot wide? I
yeah,
can't
5 foot
remember.
lot, yeah, 5 foot
Yeah.
wide, and like, no, yeah, not tall. That'd be hey, but they, like, even the like they built Los Alamos so quick that a lot of the kind of ceiling tiles didn't match up. And so the ceiling tiles didn't match up in her sets. Like it's crazy. It's and then for like 100 mil. Like I know I'm saying 100 mil. 100 mil sounds like a lot, but when you look at like Black Adam, that's 300 million. You look at the Marvels, which is 270 million. Like you look at, Battleship, I think was 300 million. Like it's John Carter. Like, I know they're VFX heavy movies, but still, to make this film with this cast in 55 days for the budget, and I guarantee you, dude, you know how much money went to that IMAX camera? You know how much money went to those camera tests? Because that's all involved in 100 million. Like that film is not cheap. That film's incredibly expensive.
The
So
thing is, it's expensive, but what makes it great is the story
yeah,
and the performances, particularly the script and the performances. That really elevates it. You could spend the same 100 million on, it's well shot, like all of Nolan's movies, stylistic. It's got some interesting shots. There's shots of people's feet. He seems to kind of go a little bit Tarantino-esque on that, usually while they're walking rather than voyeuristic feet shots. The one that I remember particularly was Oppenheimer standing on a charred corpse after he was
yeah,
having a little bit of PTSD. I remember similar from The Prestige, from The Dark Knight, from various others. He likes kind of a low angled foot shot.
we need to explore this.
Maybe. Um, but visually, it's interesting. And you could have done a lot of that with CGI. You could have
Mhm.
done a nuclear bomb with CGI. Like he even mentioned in the behind the scenes that they'd done that for The Dark Knight Rises, where you had the climactic nuclear explosion. But this, it was almost more personal. He wanted it to be more real. I'm still surprised he didn't just go all out and build a nuclear bomb and film it. I remember seeing the movie was coming out, and it's like, yeah, maybe he'll just build a nuke and just detonate it and film that, and that will be it.
I don't want to make a future Godzilla movie in 20 years, and then
Mm,
he'll shoot the real Godzilla.
yeah, exactly. No half measures.
No half measures. But you know what's crazy though is he could have gotten too preoccupied with the black and white footage, right? He could have gotten too preoccupied with the amount of actors. This could have been about him just surviving throughout the shoot with, I have so many actors. I'm doing this. I just got to survive. I got to knock these scenes out today. This script's in first person. I got to shoot. I got to shoot. It's 3 hours. I got to shoot. Then he could have lost touch of the movie just by simply being too preoccupied with all of the production troubles around him. But he didn't. You watch many movies where you notice that, like, you feel like every day on set people are just like, we just got to get through this day. Like, I don't even care about the script. Like, let's just get through it. Like, let's make, like, like Poseidon 2004, they said that they were just trying to get through it. Like, they didn't care about the script. They're like, what are we doing today? All right, let's just do it. Like, let's not die. So he had all
But
these things that he's juggling, and it works.
well, it works. We're talking about a real historical event as well,
Yeah, that's true.
and the direction he went with it was very much to focus on Oppenheimer and make everyone else peripheral and make everyone else a player in the grander scheme of things. Very Shakespearean. The you have the stage and the bit players, but your main character has all of the good soliloquies.
Mm-hmm.
It's the actual Manhattan Project. I would liken it to, I guess, in video games you've got Madden Ultimate Team or whatever, or you'd have Top Trumps, the old card game. You're basically trying to just collect, or like Pokemon or something. You're trying to collect all the best scientists who are currently in the world at the time and just build your team. That's kind of what the start of the movie's about. It's like, oh, I want Niels Bohr, and I want, get me Feynman, and get me this guy, and get me that guy, and oh, get me Teller.
Collect
And
them
it's
all.
it's it's a who's who of, I think every named scientist in that movie has some physical law or constant or thing named after him. I was reading the book that this is based on, American Prometheus, after I'd seen the movie, because I was really interested in it. And the name drops, it's bordering on the ridiculous. It's like, and so yeah, I went and Oppenheimer went and talked to Einstein, and then he was hanging out with Niels Bohr, and then he was talking to this guy who is famous for doing this, and it's like, wow, all of these names are, it would be like you or I going to a crowd of football fans and just saying, "Oh yeah, I was having a kickabout with Ronaldo, Messi, Pele, Maradona, and Johan Cruyff."
What? Like just yeah that and then in modern terms, who would it be? Like Mbappe? Let's see,
I
Jude
guess
Bellingham.
Messi, Ronaldo, Mbappe,
Jude Bellingham.
Bellingham,
Man City
Holland.
striker
Yeah,
Holland. Yeah, like I just had a kick about with them, and man, that'd be nuts. We would
but I
lose
can't tell
so
you about it
badly.
because it's classified.
Yeah, but you know what though? I mean, I know he had the transcripts that go off Nolan. I know he had the trial, and I listened to the author speak about that, and I don't know, man. I know a lot of people don't like this film, but I have a hard time with that. Like I don't know. I wish I had more to. What am I trying to say? I just think this is a well-made film by Nolan. Like I don't think this is my favorite film of 2023. Was this your favorite film of 2023?
Possibly, but I don't know.
Like I mean,
I just know that it's really, 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 really good
yeah. I
at
mean,
everything.
you know what? That's right. I think it's really good at everything. I think Past Lives probably connected with me the most. I love the idea behind Zone of Interest. I think it's quite audacious and it works beautifully. But yeah, this one's just very effective. And John Waters put it on his top 10. Everyone has it, like it's on so many top 10. The Georgia Film Critics Association gave Oppenheimer the best film of the year because like you said, it's just very, very good at everything that it does. You have Alden Ehrenreich coming out, dropping hit, like, looking great. Robert Downey Jr. crushing it. You have Rami Malek coming on and, coming in the ninth
Oh
inning
yeah, it's
and
Miller.
closing it out. Just closing it out for him. You have such a, I mean, Kenneth Branagh just pops up. But what's interesting? In most movies you watch, you even when you're watching Oppenheimer and you're like, hey, that's Josh Hartnett. Hey, that's Valerian in the City of a Thousand Planets. That's Alden Ehrenreich. Oh wow, there's Rami Malek. Hey, there's Robert Downey Jr. Hey, there's the guy from Band of Brothers. Hey, there's Jack Quaid. Hey, there's Floki from Vikings. Like you never really do get taken out of the movie with all those names, which is a gamble.
Not at
When
all. And I think the biggest credit I can give is I didn't see Cillian Murphy at all.
no,
It
mm-mm.
was all straight away from the beginning to the end. It was Oppenheimer. And the same could be said for Robert Downey Jr. He was phenomenal.
Yeah, and
His slimy politician-y character was absolutely phenomenal.
man, and just like the ups and downs of the story. If you don't really know much about it, and if you don't know much about the history, it's still great. I mean, and also too, it's just part of Nolan's tricks, right? He loves his timelines. I did a Christopher Nolan episode by the numbers for fandom, and I figured out that he's like, and without Oppenheimer, since 1998, time has been mentioned 389 times, which I kind of love. And then like, there's a total of 31 timelines total in his movies. Like, Interstellar, it mentions time 78 times, which I kind of love. Like in Inception, there's 5 timelines, but he still manages to make, like, Dunkirk, he still manages to make it interesting, right? There's the nonlinear storytelling. You go back and forth to different times, but the movie never lost me though. I don't think
I think the use of the different
black and white.
films
Yeah.
helped so
Hmm.
that you were immediately clear on which part of the timeline you were in. There was never any ambiguity that this was before Trinity or after Trinity.
No, that's a
You
great
could
point.
almost make two movies if you took the black and white bit and if you took the lead up to Trinity, you could almost have two movies. Luckily, we didn't have any studios coming in and saying, "Hey, let's make this into a two movie thing or three movies like The Hobbit," or at
Yeah.
least it made sense for Lord of the Rings. But
And do you think this movie, so it almost made $1 billion worldwide, but this is a movie that I think asks something of the viewer, but I think it showed that viewers were ready to get back in and experience that and to be patient. And because this is a movie that really builds, I think, but it's also smart in that there's like Nolan said he kind of sneaks in Trojan horses like in regards to genre. So there's the putting the team together movie. There's the horror movie. There's the coming of age story. Like there's the rise and fall. There's the
There's the 12 Angry Men-esque sitting
yeah.
in a room, just people talking, which
And
was fantastic.
I think he does a good job of this isn't one of those movies that you need to just embrace all the way through. Like you just need to sit there until that final moment hits you like a truck. This is one of those movies I think you can enjoy and go in and out of a little bit. I think you can. It's an odd film in that it asks a lot of the viewer, but it's not a beautiful art house movie that leads everybody to the ending moment. That's what that if you've paid attention the whole way through, you'll get floored. Like
Well,
this
that's
movie.
very true. So I watched, say, the first hour and 15 minutes on a flight back from Chicago to London the other day. It was a red eye, and then I went to sleep. And then I woke up and watched another 40 odd minutes of it before we landed. And then I watched more on the bus on the way to work today on my phone, and I watched the rest when I got home from work this evening. So I watched it over the course of, say, 3 or 4 days, and you never feel lost. You're immediately drawn back into what's going on, and you're immediately in the story, in the world. And yeah, I think you're totally right on that. It's not one that you need to just sit and watch. You can almost jump into it.
And that's crazy. I think there are some movies that I would only recommend to people if they can watch all the way through. And people don't have that time. So I don't think I'll be like, hey, it's a good movie, but it builds. And so does this one. But yeah, you can, I don't know if no one will like hearing this, but you can, he has to think about modern viewers watching movies. Like enough people saw this in the theaters and they were enraptured. But I think now, yeah, you can catch it. I was watching this on my phone the other day in class to see how good it looks. It looks awesome. Like I have a Google Pixel. It looks beautiful on that thing. And and now that I've seen it in theaters twice, like I'm totally comfortable watching on my phone. Like I'm totally happy with that because I've experienced it the best way through. So it's interesting that this movie will have quite a long life, I think, because it's not dependent on a theatrical experience or the spectacle, but it also can be watched in chunks. So, I mean, you can't make a 3-hour movie and expect everyone on the planet to have enough time to sit through all of it. So, yeah, I mean, look at the box office receipts, dude. Like 950 mil? That's insane. I know it's part of Barbenheimer, but that's a lot of money for this.
But what Barbie and Oppenheimer show is that when directors are coming out with original ideas, people connect with it and they will
Mhm.
go and see these movies that are taking maybe a little more risk than whatever the latest Marvel movie is going to be, or what Transformers 10 are we up to now, or
Or any
how many
bio
Fast and Furiouses have we had,
like
and
the
how many.
biopics, right? Like a biopic that it's just the stock. Here's an artist gets popular. Like it's just a stock
I see they're
film.
doing a Michael Jackson one now. There's a Bob Marley one coming out next
Yeah.
month.
And like everyone says that, like I love the star of Kingsley Benadire. He's in Barbie. He's great in that. But everyone says it's just a stock movie. It's like a stock walk hard type movie. And then you have this one, Oppenheimer, that yeah, it's
This
anything
doesn't
but.
feel like a biopic. It feels like a Nolan movie
Yeah.
that
Like
happens to be a biopic.
like I have a question though. I mean, would this have worked if it was more of an ensemble? Like I know we go back to Robert Downey Jr., right? I know that there's a gigantic ensemble in it. But, if you think about maybe Dark Knight Rises with all the different storylines going on, I don't think that one gels. I think to make this one gel, you need to. Now, I'm fully aware Downey Jr.'s in separate sections of the movie, but it's still very much so Oppenheimer's film. Like, if you made this more of like an Ocean's 11, putting the team together, or like an Eternals, or like, I don't think it works. I think it needs to be laser focused on several people and then have
If you were
just,
making it an ensemble, you end with Trinity, basically.
yeah.
And then you could potentially do a follow-up with the McCarthyist witch hunts, etc., about Oppenheimer and that whole thing as a second thing. If you're devoting screen time to all of these different cast of characters, yeah, there were hundreds of people at Los Alamos.
Mhm.
and there were hundreds of well-known, important people at Los Alamos who could all be given some screen time or some backstory. It would lose its impact. I think telling this story through the lens of Oppenheimer and keeping it close to him makes it more compelling.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I just yeah, it's
Though,
Nolan.
as I've already said, I wish there was more Jack Quaid
Yeah.
doing silly Feynman things.
I mean, listen, I love all the supporting characters in this movie. Like, I think they're great. Like Josh Hartnett. Like, I'm just so happy that Josh Hartnett had a great 2023. And I love when he was talking about this movie. Like, I don't know. I just think it's interesting that everybody, all the supporting characters who came into this film, they weren't doing the Steve McQueen in the background fiddling with their hat. They weren't jealous of Robert Downey Jr.'s hat like he was jealous of James Garner's turtleneck in The Great Escape. Like there's no one trying to steal the limelight. Like even in the court scene, or even in the I call it courtroom scene, or in the shitty room scene, Emily Blunt is just sitting there kind of stone faced. When Cillian Murphy's sitting there, he's sitting there stone faced. They're not, doing jumping jacks in the background. They're allowing the other actors to exist, even though it's their movies. And now, I think it's all part of being an unselfish actor. But yeah, it just seemed like everyone had their head on right for this movie, and it worked.
Well, a lot of the actors I've seen interviewed have all said that they went into it with that in mind about how they were essentially part of the background and they were there to facilitate the story rather than to facilitate their own performance. It was they are this character fits into this scene here, and they have thoughts about how this character might act, and they'd talk to Nolan and they'd run it by him, and but ultimately they just fit into this tapestry of Los Alamos and the whole world, and we get phenomenal little bits of performance from most of them because it's all understated, but it feels kind of real.
Do you know why he probably got 55 people? But not 55 people, so many actors. It's because it's shot in 55 days. Like, how many days did they spend with Robert Downey Jr.? Probably 10, 15.
They had Gary Oldman for one.
One. So, you have the Florence Pugh scenes, which are kind of designated to the house and the apartments and hotels. You have, so you could get Josh Hartnett for 12 days. And he's like, yeah, I'll give
Tom
up 12.
Conti was probably a day or two as Einstein, maybe.
Right. And like, I would give up 12. If I was Dane DeHaan, I'll hang out for 3 weeks. Like I'll hang out for a month to be on this movie. And the nice thing
Yeah, I'm
is you're
sure
not
Branagh was only there a couple of days as well. He
right.
was only in a few scenes.
He didn't have to use a Russian accent, so that was nice. So wait, no, yeah, yeah, yeah,
He had a Danish
yeah,
accent.
yeah, which was good. But I don't know. I think you can get these actors because like, hey, come in for 3 days. I'll shoot you out. Like come in for one day. This isn't Mad Max Fury Road where you're stuck on a location for 7 months. Like this is hey, David Death Melchin, like, what do you got? You got 3 days for me? All right, come on in. Like, hey, Al Ehrenreich, you got 3 days? Come on. Like, it's just people come in, they're not burnt out, you get fresh faces coming in, they all know their role, and the movie's successful. But I think that's what happens when you have such a good shooting schedule. Like I love Edgar Wright, but his movies go over 100 days. Like Baby Driver, I know John Barenthal had to fly back 3-4 times just to be in that movie, and he's not even in it that much. So I think you can get the
I think
names,
part of that comes from
all the coverage.
having such a clean vision of what you want.
Yeah. And
Because then if you know what you want, you know when you've got it, and you don't need to try different things. You don't need to maybe rethink certain things that haven't worked. If you've got this ultra clear vision, it's a lot easier to execute on it and stick to your schedule. You're not going to overrun.
and listen, like I'm not bagging on Edgar Wright. Like he knew exactly the shots he needed. They just took a very long time to sync up music with all the car chases and stuff. So I think he knew what he wanted. It just took forever. So I think with Oppenheimer, yeah, just he has such a clear vision. He has such a great team. I mean, look what he did with Gary Oldman's scary in this movie, man. Like Truman's scary in this film. Like it's very unsettling.
Gary Oldman, he's just phenomenal. I've been watching Slow Horses, which is that British spy show he's been in, and he's brilliant at it. He's just so good.
My first experiences with him were True Romance and The Professional when I was like 11 and 12. I'm like, this dude's heavy.
Professional Leon is amazing.
everyone. Does he say that? I need
Who,
everybody.
who should we
Oh.
send? Everyone. As he does another bump of coke off a handgun, probably. I don't remember the scene exactly, but
Yeah, just he's just out and he takes the pill and he kind of does that like that head
was it
tilt. Oh man.
Stansfield? Was
Yeah,
that the
Stanfield.
name of
Like
the
he's
character?
crazy. But yeah, just watching him in this and learning that they had to build when they were shooting that Oval Office set, the paint was still drying on there. They had to completely work around the clock to do it. But I mean, everyone says that Nolan establishes trust and they all succeed or fail together. And like Nolan is there at earliest in the day and he's there latest in the day. And I think he's a good leader in that regards. And that's how you can make this movie in 55. Listen, I've been on so many film sets, right? 55 days is crazy to make this movie. Like it's I've shot a commercial, a 30-second commercial, and it took me 20 hours and it was in one location. But commercials are different because you have the people filming it, and then you have the company there, then you have the producers, and there's a lot of egos in it. But like to film a 30-second commercial, it takes 20 hours. Like
Yeah,
you'd
I
have been
remember
shooting
doing
Oppenheimer for a year.
I did the 48-hour film project a few years ago, and we got, I don't know, 3 pages of script filmed in 48 hours. Obviously, we're inexperienced and not really knowing what we're doing, but you can see how these things take so long.
Yeah, and I guess that's why I like that's when so I've learned, I think my biggest pet peeve is like when I watch a movie and I like it, but like there's that movie White Noise with Noah Baumbach. I think that cost like 140 million to make, and I immediately liked it less because that's not a $140 million movie. I watched The Gray Man. That has like a $250 million budget. That's not a $250 million movie. Now, obviously, you got to pay the actors a lot up front on Netflix because they don't get back end, but that's absurd. That's throwing money away. And then, Oppenheimer, when I heard it was 55 days and they had an insane pace on this movie and how controlled it is, that drops my jaw. Like I think people should really like, even if you don't like it, knowing that it was filmed in 55 days, there should be some appreciation there. Because yes, there's not a lot of VFX, right? There's not a lot of action. There's not a ton of second unit. But you know how much coverage there is in those courtroom scenes?
Well,
You know how much
there
coverage
is
there is?
plenty of VFX.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What there isn't are digital effects.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, so yeah, there's a lot of beautiful special effects. There's not a lot of visual. So like Nolan was over Cillian Murphy's head doing a little twirly thing. He had that macro, lens and camera shooting all the stuff in camera for the explosions. Like they
And they
had
had
one
a
big
projection of
explosion.
the wall behind him that they just shook the projector to
Yeah.
make the wall shake. It was delightfully simple in how it was executed, but it really works in camera.
Man, you know how much of a high you should get if you're working on that crew and you're on that unit? Like you're just experimenting and you're figuring things out. Like I know there's one big explosion, but they just filled up like a gas tank with unleaded gas, and he probably put some like special things in there, and they blew it up. But that's like
They
one
went
big
into it in
explosion.
the documentary and they said, we did this and then this detonated half a second later and then we
Yeah,
added some gasoline and then we added this which detonated 2 seconds later, in order so they had multiple different pieces of it to try to layer this specific explosion and
that's
then just filmed
awesome.
all of it.
That's so cool. So I have a question. Like, what do you think about Florence Pugh's role in this movie? Because it's just another kind of Nolan definitely has a trend of killing off women in his movies. That happens a lot, and I know but this is a true story, so he included her. Like a lot of news was made about her nudity in the movie, and I'm not trying to be like that guy talking about it, but did you really think all that? Like I know in the behind the scenes stuff, Florence Pugh was saying it gave her power. Like a lot of women during this time didn't do that, and so she was the liberated, powerful one who didn't care. But it does feel out of place in this movie. I'm not trying to be like a prude or like but I don't really understand why.
I think the hotel scene where they're sat around chatting, everybody's naked, they're just sat there talking, it's not sexualized at all.
Yeah.
It didn't need to be nude, but if you or I are sitting around with our wives naked having a chat, this is a thing that has probably happened, will happen.
Yeah.
It's fairly natural. And then you have less shock nudity value, I guess, when you move to the later nude scene in the shitty room,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
it's okay, you've already seen her naked, she's done naked stuff, and then you're seeing kind of Kitty's perspective that, she's in the room as this is being relived. The whole Tatlock thing, it's quite important to the overall narrative, establishing the
Um,
Oppenheimer's a commie.
yeah, he's a commie, and she was a commie, and then she had, like
Yeah.
all the people that were with Chevalier and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's there's some good lines. Like, why do you like? She's like, but you called. Well, don't come over. You asked me to come over. Well, don't listen. Like, there's some good lines, but I don't know. It just felt a little. I feel like everything's so deliberate in the movie, and then this, it wasn't needed, I guess. But like, when is it ever needed? Like the '80s didn't need any of it. That was pretty much every
I
'80s
thought it
movie.
was written into the rules
Yeah,
that you
it
had to
was.
have one naked scene in every movie just to show that we're in the 80s. It's scene setting. It's okay, boobies, boobies, boobies.
Yeah, when making Valley Girl, they're like, you need 3 nude scenes, and the director, she was like, what? So she
Like
just
Die
filled it.
Hard, the opening party, you had to have like that scene with two people going and making out on a desk or whatever, or
Commando, Roadhouse. Like, come on, guys. Like the '80s were absurd, but yeah, this one just felt. I don't know. I guess it's just a Nolan movie. I guess I've never really seen that. Like he's made an R-rated movie before, but this one, I don't know. It just felt not necessary to me. I'm not. But I mean, Florence Pugh's a badass, and she makes the movie she wants, and she very clearly does what she does. I don't think she cares. Like, I think she just does what she wants. So, if she's cool with it, then I think audiences should probably be cool with it, because she's not going to be exploited in a film. I don't think Florence Pugh would be down with that. I think she would fight for herself. So I don't know. I just wanted to bring it up because it's been in so many articles that I just want to touch on it with you.
well, it comes into the whole Game of Thrones sex position
Ugh,
narrative that was going around where the story is advanced through shagging.
that's so lazy. I hate it. Like, knowing what we know now about Game of Thrones, and they're like, yeah, we just needed to say some dialogue. So like, oh, we'll show some nudity and explain things. It's like The Big Short when they're like, hey, we'll put Margot Robbie in a bathtub and she'll talk to you about taxes or host loans because you just can't listen to it yourself. So I mean, maybe America is that. Maybe people are that basic, but oh man, you just brought
Well,
back
yeah,
sex
I've seen
position.
that documentary, Idiocracy, after all. It's
Yeah. Ouch, my balls. But so, I mean, who of all these people that came in, right? Like, who had the biggest impact on you? I mean, I think, I love seeing Macon Blair's Lloyd Garrison. I'm a big fan of his. He's in like several. He's in Green Room. He's in Blue Ruin. He's in I Don't Feel at Home at This World Anymore. Like, he's an actor I really admire. I think David Krumholtz is wonderful. He always gives good old Oppie and Orange. He's like, eat, eat. I think he is really strong, and also I think I really wanted to headbutt. Was it Roger Rob? I was gonna say Robert Roger Rob, like Jason
Oh,
Clark,
yeah,
man.
the prosecutor dude.
Woo! Just that guy went hard, and like, but like, Tony Goldwyn though found a little bit of heart in his role. You have like James Darcy just popping up for a little bit in this movie. About to get a poisoned apple. It's but like, what characters sort of worked for you? I guess what side characters popped for you?
I thought Teller was interesting, um,
Yeah.
as the almost the jilted physicist who, I just want to build an H bomb, man. Just let me build an H bomb.
That needs an ox cart. And knowing that's Benny Safdie too is kind of crazy, right?
I thought Rami Malek was very good in his role, very understated.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Josh Hartnett was good as Lawrence.
Hmm.
He was not Josh Hartnetty at all, I think is the way I'd put it. Another one who just kind of disappeared into the role rather than me thinking, oh, that's Josh Hartnett. Every time he was on screen, it was more, oh, that's Lawrence.
I love when actors stop becoming heartthrobs and then just become character actors. Like, I think Colin Farrell made that adjustment. Like, I think several actors, they're like, hey, you're interesting in this movie. Headline a $200 million movie called Pearl Harbor. And then, like, and eventually it blows up on you. And then you just kind of figure out who you are as an actor. So I think Josh Hartnett was really good. Also, Casey Affleck, man. He had like, his eyes were black as coal. And that, like, Boris Pash is a scary dude.
Oh, He is
Yeah, I mean,
scary.
like, if you
I've
get
read
into the
I've
real
read I've read a fair bit about him outside of what you see in the movie, and his kind of willingness to go to extra legal methods on communists,
yeah,
were only hinted at in the movie, never mind what he actually got up to.
but you felt that from him. He's scary. But, I also like that Josh Peck and Olivia Thirlby had a Whackness reunion. Like, there's a lot of weird reunions that you could tie from all the actors in this movie. And also, I was just really happy to see Al Ehrenreich. I've always liked him as an actor. Like, I love him in Hail Caesar. I thought, like, but now this year he came back with Fair Play, which is really good. He's in Cocaine Bear, and then he's also in Oppenheimer. But I thought he was really good, like, next to Robert Downey Jr. He held his own with him.
He did, and Robert Downey Jr., that performance. I walked out of the theater the first time I saw it, and I immediately just said, "Right, Cillian Murphy, Robert Downey Jr., and Emily Blunt are all getting Oscar nominations for
Yep.
this. They were all phenomenal."
Yep.
And I think it's fairly likely that Robert Downey Jr. and Cillian Murphy will win. I know there's stiffer competition in the actress.
Giamatti's coming on hot. And Joy Divine Randolph, she's going to win for Holdovers because she's
Yeah,
incredible in that movie. Like, when I watched, I was like, she's winning the Oscar. She's so good in that. But yeah, I think it's going to be Murphy and Giamatti who are battling. I think RDJ has a pretty good road to victory.
I I don't think there's too much competition there. I think
Yeah.
he's coasting along the good times press tour and saying all the right things.
And also too, I feel bad because, like, he Nolan said that he was, what, once upon, like, his casting in the MCU was probably if you had to put together the greatest casted roles of all time, Tony Stark as Robert Downey Jr. statistically has to be in the top 3 because
It's
he captured
look what it's
lightning.
launched.
Yeah, he captured lightning in a bottle. And I saw Iron Man in Korea, man, and watching him in that movie, he was on it. And then that set the tone for the entire MCU. And so, yeah, but then he went and did The Judge because he wanted to win an Oscar, and you're like, ugh. And then he did Doolittle, and you're like, what is happening? And so, seeing him get a call from Nolan and show up, and I guess he had a just group of yes people around him that just told him, yeah, go make what Doolittle. Yeah, that'll be great. Like, you'll be awesome in that. And then he
Well,
goes
it's
and
like Matt Damon. Matt Damon, I think, was taking a break from acting, and he'd left one instruction saying, "I'm taking a break unless Chris Nolan calls."
this is the most important thing in the history of the world. Oh, what a great moment. But yeah, I think Downey needed this, right? Like, he doesn't need money. He was doing this interview with Mark Ruffalo for Poor Things, and he's incredible. Oh, Poor Things. That's some good competition
That
right
I
there.
I haven't seen it.
He's
I
out of his
watched
mind.
The Favorite, and that was weird.
Oh yeah. I love Yorgos. But they were talking, and he's like, listen, man, like, you don't need money. Like, RDJ is wealthy beyond wealthy, he but then he pops up in this movie and he's incredible. So I think it took, after his gigantic run of probably being one of the most recognizable faces on the planet, you need to reset with someone like a Christopher Nolan, where it's a Christopher Nolan movie. It is not a Robert Downey Jr. movie. This is not a Cillian Murphy movie. This is not a Matt Damon movie. This isn't the 90s. Like, this isn't a Will Smith picture, a Tom Cruise picture. This is a Nolan movie. And I think he needed that to spark something in himself again. And yeah, I mean, I didn't, well, sorry about that spark. The whole movie's about a spark. But I don't know. I think this is going to be great for him. Like, I think he needed this. And also, Killian Murphy, between Sunshine and Oppenheimer, Murphy's been in some pretty good explosive movies. I just want to put that out there.
Yes, he was also in The Dark Knight Rises
Yeah.
for a little bit, which had
Yeah.
a nuclear explosion.
He he's like the nuclear man, I would say. What else has he been in? I think that's it with explosions. He did About
But
Time.
was he in About Time?
No, he was in the Time movie with
Yeah.
Timberlake and Seafried. And it was shot by Roger Deakins. So it's not a good movie, but this it looks beautiful. And so it's one of the most confusing things you'll ever watch. You're like, this looks really good, but it's not good, but it looks great. Like, your processors in your brain kind of short circuit when you watch that movie. In Time.
Don't know if I saw that one.
We talked about Time.
But he's very much someone who just embodies a role when he's in it, though.
Mm-hmm.
He's such a chameleon.
And you know, I think my favorite thing you say a lot of great stuff, but when you said he is Oppenheimer, he is, and that reminds me of his role in Peaky Blinders, because I can only I think I've only watched a handful of shows where I've actually believed that what they're doing they could do. Like I remember watching Gladiator and watching Russell Crowe in that movie. I'm like, yeah, he could kill all these people, like no doubt. Like he's like I believed it. I was
The
100%
frost makes the
right.
blade stick.
Oh man, I was like, he'd kill everybody. Like I believed that Russell Crowe could do what he was doing. And in Peaky Blinders, Murphy, I believe him. There's something about how quiet he is and how like kind of violent he is, but also how not like he's the one you watch out for. But there's something about his body, like he's a slight guy. He's not a big dude, but there's something about him in Peaky Blinders where I just was like, this guy would hurt me. Like, I don't know, like I don't know if you feel that about Peaky Blinders, but there's something about him in roles where you just I don't know. He maybe he just gets so into it, but I in Peaky Blinders, he felt completely transformed. And then when I watched this, you know, he was all about the silhouette. He put his hand on his hip. He had the hat. He had the outfits. You know, he did that whole look to become iconic, to have that silhouette of an Oppenheimer silhouette. It's like that time when you tried to wear those giant scarves and like big hats, and you're like, well, everyone will recognize me, and that'll become like my legacy. And then you dropped it like a week later. But he wanted, I don't know, when he went into this role, it didn't feel like mimicry, right? You watch like Walk the Line or Ray or these movies and you can feel the mimicry. This one didn't feel like mimicry because he didn't have
A
much to
lot of
go
that's
on.
because of the research he'd done, where he'd listened to Oppenheimer speak, but that was Oppenheimer speaking
In front of
rather
a
than
crowd.
what Oppenheimer's like in private. And I think he did a lot of research into what other people had said about actually interacting with Oppenheimer and what he was like in private and how he acted. And he built his performance in such a way that he would be delivering those speeches as Oppenheimer delivers the speeches, but he was able to transpose and kind of build this persona of Oppenheimer of how he would be in private that
Mhm.
would translate to how he is in these big speeches or how he was seen on TV and what he was perceived to be by the general public.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. He didn't have hundreds of hours of interviews and music videos and concert performances and you know like Folsom prison
And
performances
there'd
with Johnny
be,
Cash.
very little candid stuff as well.
And so
All of it was very much rigid, staged press interviews or lectures or whatever.
now every episode I ask you a question, and I want to ask you a big question now. So in this movie, he says that the two things that make him really happy are physics and New Mexico. Like that's his ideal life. If he could just have a beautiful ranch in New Mexico and work on physics, what would be your ideal combination? So if someone said, "What's your perfect location and your perfect job that would just make for the perfect life?" What would you do?
It's interesting. It's location wise, I think it would have to be somewhere in Italy. Maybe
That's what Megan said.
I
Yeah, yeah,
I
my
love
wife.
Italy.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
go back every year. I just absolutely adore it. I think being somewhere in Italy and then being, for a job. I don't know if so much. Can I be retired and just sitting on a vineyard in Tuscany and enjoying the slow life while watching rugby?
So retired in Italy on a villa, just watching rugby.
Yeah, with depending on the temperature or time of day, a cold beer or a glass of red wine.
Okay, so I would say the Isle of Skye and being like a successful writer, like the
Okay.
Coen brother, like that would be. But I don't want to be out there in the winter.
That's remote and chilly in the winter, especially.
I'll go a month out of the year, and then okay, no. So I need to pick a permanent location. He said New Mexico and physics. You said retired in Italy. I love Isle of Skye, but I'm not living out there year round. Okay, I'll probably just be at the next Italian villa because Megan loves it out there, and I can write about movies. And then you can take a train into Rome, and it's close. Or there's some giant Naples. Like you could take us. The transportation out there is so awesome that it wouldn't be a problem. So yeah, there's some cool spots in Naples I like, but I wouldn't want to
I
live.
did a
That city's
pizza
stressful.
crawl in Naples once. We went to like 8 pizza joints in one day. It
Oh, no.
was crazy. I didn't want to eat pizza for a month.
That place is stressful though. Like it's busy. So yeah, I'll do that. And then for a month of the year, I'll go to Isle of Skye. And then for a month of the year, I'll live in St. Pete in a cool condo down there. And then yeah, then probably come back here to Georgia because I love Georgia. So yeah, there it is. 4 places.
Nice.
I love Georgia, man. Like I'm close to the mountains, close to the city.
I have not been. It's on my to-do list at some point to kind of visit more of this, kind of do that trip across the states and kind of go through all these various places that I've only heard of.
Yeah.
Perhaps could make a stop in New Mexico,
Oh yeah. And we can do some physics.
do some physics.
That
Yeah,
sounds
I
fun.
haven't used my degree in about 20 years, but I do actually have a physics degree.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And that's why in this movie I found myself far more interested, at least the first time I watched it, I was really interested in the lead up to Trinity and the physicists and all of that. And I was less interested in the political side, the whole McCarthy witch hunt communist thing. I was like, okay, fine, that's not that interesting. And I found the same thing actually when I read the book. I was really interested in all the stuff leading up to Trinity and the atomic bomb. And I had to take a break from reading the book and then force myself to kind of get back into it to read through all the political stuff afterwards,
Yeah.
because that's where my interest lies. And I'm glad I did. Obviously, in the movie, it pulls you right back in because it's interweaved or interleaved so well. But with the book, it was a little bit more of a struggle. It's like, okay, I need to actually force myself to read this because it will be interesting. I just need to. It's just not as interesting as reading about the physics and what was going on
Man,
to me.
no, no, I didn't know you had a physics degree. I have a lit degree. I'm actually one of the few people who uses his lit degree for their job. So
I do
that's worked
not
out.
use my physics degree for my job.
And I was like 2 classes away from another degree, but I was like, get me out of here. And then I went back for media and communication studies for my master's. That one's actually paid off.
My
But
master's, I got a master's in computer science. That definitely feeds into my day job.
got it. Cool. But dude, this was awesome. Any final thoughts about Oppenheimer before we get out of here?
I think it is probably Nolan's masterpiece. I think
Oh,
he's collected all of what he does well as a filmmaker, and he's really tightened up his craft in this one. There's very
whoa.
little fluff. There's awesome performances, and it's a 3-hour movie that you never look at your watch and say, "Oh, how much longer is left in it?"
Hmm.
The pace is just perfect, and it just keeps building and building all the way through.
I
And as I
agree.
said, I've not seen anything like it when leaving the theater to stunned silence. And that's kind of the praise I can give it. I thought it was phenomenal.
Hey, before we get out of here, let's do a quick Cillian Murphy draft. I'll let you have the first pick.
Um, Cillian Murphy draft. I'm gonna take Batman Begins because
Ooh,
that's my favorite of the three Nolan Batmans, and that's the one where Cillian Murphy is actually giving a performance rather than a cameo.
the Batman. Scarecrow's like my favorite Batman villain. I love him. I'm taking 28 Days Later.
That's a good one.
Yeah, you got to do that. What's your second pick?
Let's see. I need to get the list up so I
I
don't
just
miss
dropped this
anything.
on him here.
It's like, yeah, okay. I think yeah, you could just do an entirely Nolan.
Yeah, you could. They've done 6 movies together.
um, you could, but I don't want to do that. That's a little bit. I'll go Sunshine. I quite like Sunshine. It's like weird and not quite scientifically accurate, but it's fun.
I mean, it becomes a horror slasher at the end. The movie
Yeah.
loses its mind. All right, so you got Sunshine. I am gonna take Free Fire. I love Free Fire, and he just lays on the ground for a lot of it, and he's great. Like I think he's perfect in that movie, so I'm taking Free Fire.
So I'm gonna go for a probably lesser known movie called
Intermission.
Intermission.
Yeah, I was gonna do that. He's a little squirrely guy in it. I love it.
Yeah. Obviously close to my heart being a native Dubliner. Um, It's yeah, you got Colin Meaney in it as well. It's Colin Farrell as well.
Ah, that's a good pick. All right, so you're gonna hate me here, but I'm gonna take Inception because I just think he's
Ooh,
really awesome in it. So I'm going with Inception.
let's see. I think what have I done? Got Batman Begins, Sunshine, Intermission. I'll
He's
take
done it.
Tron Nah, he's only a cameo in Tron
Oh,
Legacy,
yeah.
but
Okay. Yeah. It's a good point. Good point.
it's like that is a fun one, but
I love that movie.
kind of running out of movies. He hasn't done that many because I guess he was on Peaky Blinders so far. I'm going to take Oppenheimer. I think
All
it's
right, good. Yeah, you got to do it. I'm going to take Red Eye because he said he didn't really like the movie much, but I think it's a really fun B movie. I enjoy it a lot, so I'm going to take Red Eye.
then for the last one, hmm,
Do what you want. Take what you want.
I've not seen that In Time that you talked about, so I can't really say that, and I don't want to just choose a ringer.
All right, want to just stop at 4?
Yeah, let's
All
stop at
right,
four.
I like it. Well, this was great, man. Thank you for joining me, Niall. We finished Barbenheimer.
Yeah, it's been really fun.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for joining me. So for me, Mark Hoffmeyer, for Niall Moore, this is Movies with Flicks. We'll see you next week.